Hello, everybody. Our share today is entitled Acculturating Alcohol and Sanctifying Psychedelics. It's time to stand up. And before we begin, I just want to thank Amichai for controlling us all the way from Israel. Right now, he's in a bomb shelter, which is why we have a peculiar background. But we wish Amichai and everybody to be safe. And thank you, Amichai, for coming on and for controlling us all the way from your bomb shelter. All right. Our share this morning is going to be somewhat different from the usual format, where we normally look into academic ideas, tracing history, looking into things in a deep manner. But today's more of a commentary on our times. And in a way, it's pained me to have to speak about such matters. But I do so because I believe that it's time to speak openly about these matters. And more importantly, it's time to stand up. It's time to take a stance. So let us begin. Alcohol and drug abuse has long been perceived as a problem that may be part of the Jewish community, but not necessarily part of the frum or religious community. But as we shall see, it's closer to home than we may have imagined. Shlomo, are you able to switch off your mic if you can? Thank you. According to psychologist Dan Wolf, who heads Hartenhaus, which is a well-known rehabilitation center in Johannesburg, he says that in the past, we have adopted a range of methodologies where we try to counter alcohol and psychedelic abuse. But nowadays, the prevailing atmosphere or the prevailing attitude seems to be an acceptance that modern use or moderate use is a reasonable path to take. It's okay if you're doing it quietly and in moderation. That seems to be our approach now. We've given up on the fight. But the issue of psychedelics and substances is no longer abstract, because it's reshaping, as we shall see, the very fabric of our community. And it demands recognition, it demands response, and I maintain that it demands an active stance. So let's look at some definitions. Psychedelics are drugs, but they're not narcotics. Narcotics depress consciousness, whereas psychedelics alter consciousness by modifying perception, mood, cognition. Psychedelics are often described as being conscious expanding, but this is not really a pharmacological definition. Narcotics, on the other hand, are effective painkillers, and they carry high risks of dependence and overdose. Psychedelics like psilocybin, LSD, and mescaline, which is a cactus, which act on serotonin receptors in the brain, are being studied for their therapeutic benefits, but importantly, they can and they do trigger adverse psychological reactions. Someone who is well versed in this field passed away now, but it's Professor Dr. Menachem Breyer, who's a professor of psychology and a consultant psychologist at the Shiva University. And he writes that we should not underestimate the value of these psychedelics, and we should not categorically oppose supervised experimentation with this phenomena. So we should not oppose the research. Masters in Houston write that LSD is like atomic energy. It has enormous potential for good or evil. Right now, we are just seeing the mental Hiroshimas and the fallout. But by implication, through further experimentation, we may see some of the benefit of these psychedelics, as long as the experimentation is done in a scientific and professional manner. Now, Dr. Breyer acknowledges that there is scientific benefit to research. I think everybody does. But, and here comes the but, he also categorically warns against its dangers. And for our purposes, as religious Jews, incompatibility with halacha. It's not compatible with halacha, in his view, when used in the popular environment. In other words, halachically, you can do research into it. You can use it for therapeutic treatment. But as it's used in the popular environment, he maintains that it is absolutely incompatible with Judaism and with halakha. And he writes, the effects of drug hallucinations may reappear weeks later after you've taken them under stress. A single dose is sufficient to cause permanent personality changes, including homicidal and suicidal tendencies. A single ounce of LSD, for example, is enough dosage for 300,000 people. Now, the problem is, having established that it is good to do research into psychedelics, it is good to understand that they may have value under controlled conditions. And following the line and the argument of people like Professor Breyer and many others, not enough others, still maintaining that this is not a Jewish practice. We, however, find within the Jewish community today and the religious community today, I'm going to give you some examples, where psychedelics are claimed to be part and parcel of a Jewish religious revival and Jewish religious experience. The psychedelics are conflated with a religious, a meaningful and deep religious experience. In other words, you're not doing it because you want to get high or expand your consciousness. You're doing it because it becomes an expression of your spiritual yearning within the confines of Judaism. And this is how psychedelics are often promoted within the Jewish community today. I've come across this. You've come across this. Its adherents, says Breyer, claim the ability to expand consciousness. This is the first thing that you hear. Your mind opens up. You have such clarity. You have expanded consciousness. The users also claim that they are transported to dreamlike states. They claim that they have an increase in depth introspection and experience their own inner world. There's a sense of transcending time and space. And, says Breyer, in short, its effects seem to reproduce the experience of the mystics. And this is something that I want to focus on, concentrating perhaps on a theological approach or Jewish theological approach to psychedelics. The claim is that, or the claim of many within the religious community, is you are now able to reproduce the experience of the mystics. You can have a genuine Jewish mystic experience, the same way as Moses did, the same way as the prophets did, and the same way as the great mystics in Kabbalah did. You can now experience it, and your experience will be the same experience as the original Jewish mystical experience. So you now have a shortcut into the mystical, Kabbalistic experience. Some users report that after undergoing a psychedelic experience, their character traits have changed because they can now incorporate the experiences into their daily lives as soon as they return to normal consciousness. So they will acknowledge that they're out of it for a while, a good couple of hours. But what they learn, they're able to integrate back into their lives, and then they become useful citizens as a result, and useful Jews, useful religious Jews as a result of that experience as soon as they come back to normal consciousness. However, says Breyer also, in reality, the only recurrent traits in the drug seem to be their negative effects, not their positive transformation. In reality, in theory, there may be able to be positive transformation. You may feel that you're getting there, but in practice, there's more fallout than benefit. Closer to home than we imagine. Over the last couple of weeks, I've conducted a number of conversations with rabbis, both local and overseas, across the spectrum. And a striking pattern emerged. While most of the rabbis I consulted acknowledged that substance abuse, including alcohol, psychedelics, was indeed a problem in our communities, in our religious communities, very few were prepared to speak against it openly. And this reluctance is understandable. Leaders, rabbis who are employed by congregations are wary of jeopardizing their positions and the images of approachability. A rabbi is a paid employee, and a rabbi is conscious of what he needs to do to maintain that position. Ask any rabbi if he's honest with you. This is how it works. No different from anything else. But what I found more surprisingly was a tacit endorsement in some of these quarters of a quiet, so-called controlled use of these substances. In other words, these rabbis were saying it's not as bad as we make out. Such activity is okay, as long as it's controlled and quiet and sort of out of the public view. And I even encountered instances where some of these religious leaders admitted that they had and do participate in such controlled consumption of these substances, sometimes alone and sometimes together with their congregants. And it's always framed not as a recreational experience, although it is sometimes done that way as well, but it is often framed, I'd say more often than not, as an extension of the religious experience. More disturbing was the idea that what they were doing was okay and clean and neutral. And it was an avenue of religious experientialism. The same way, explained to me the same way as alcohol was and is used as a Verbringen tool. In other words, it's used to get together with groups of people who are like-minded. Sometimes if they're not like-minded, this is how you make them like-minded. You drink together, you undertake certain hachlotas, certain decisions that you're going to learn extra Torah and do all sorts of wonderful things. And it becomes a means of drawing closer. I'm talking about the Verbringen and the alcohol, closer to God, closer to your fellow participants. And there's a sense of general well-being and fellowship that is produced as a result of these Verbringens. I know this world. I spent decades in this world. I also know for a fact that alcohol was offered to a group of school children, of school girls, I might add, of school girls of bat mitzvah age, just pre-bat mitzvah age, as part of a school program. Alcohol fuels many, if not most, of our communal activities. Can you think of a school function you go to, or sometimes even a shul service that you go to, where alcohol is not, if not freely available, at least available? Have a l'chaim before mincha, l'chaim before shachrit, and certainly on Shabbos. Sometimes alcohol is framed as part of an almost necessary pre-Shabbos preparation. We have Haftorah clubs where huge swaths of the shul get up and walk out and come back prepared for Musaf, spiritually prepared for the Musaf service, if they come back for Musaf. Some congregants have to be guided home after shul services. I have watched over the years people being brought into religion through the bottle. There was a time when I was growing up, the religious movement had moved to our cities. We had rabbis from overseas. The local people had never been exposed to religion in this new way. And there was a concerted program to actively get new recruits drunk, to sit with them. Well, the term was used to Verbring with them. But in essence, one had to drink with them. If they were rich, one could often get donations out of them and commitments out of them. And I've seen people being brought into religion a lot of people, a whole Baal Teshuva, an early Baal Teshuva movement was actually birthed. It's something I witnessed with my own eyes through the bottle. I saw people being brought into Judaism, and today, Baruch Hashem, their families and their grandchildren are all going to religious schools. It's wonderful. But I watched these people being brought in through the bottle and kept in religion with that same bottle. But spirituality must not be confused with the spirit in the bottle. The body and the mind can make their own drugs. They do make their own drugs. It is possible to put oneself into such states with one's mind. And all of our experiences, both religious and otherwise, can still remain real and unaided by foreign substances, but you can still experience the drug of your mind. It just takes a little bit longer. If someone is not fit to drive a motor vehicle, then I do not want to hear Torah coming from their mouths. If they don't know their left blinker from their right blinker, I don't want to hear. I don't want to be taught. I don't want to listen to them. I don't even want to hear their thoughts. I don't want to take part in their conversations. Yeah, some may counter and say, well, that's quite a dramatic approach. Well, so be it. These same people maintain that drinking in moderation is perfectly fine. The problem is, how do you define moderation? Because even after one sip of alcohol, and you can stand on your head, after one sip of alcohol, one is, to whatever degree, under its influence. And I do not want to take any learning or education or listen to anything coming through a funnel of someone under the influence of anything. The Beit Yosef writes, inebriation is entirely prohibited. Entirely. You can never be drunk. And there is no greater sin than drunkenness. This is the most overlooked classical piece of halakha. It's entirely prohibited. You're not allowed to get drunk. You're not allowed to drink. There's no sin greater than drunkenness. What's drunkenness? Anything under the influence of alcohol. And it is the cause of many sins. That's taken from Orach Chaim. No one quotes this. But the problem now is compounded. Because alcohol, which is what we've been talking about till now, is no longer the problem. No longer the only problem. It's no longer the only substance that keeps people from and fuels our societal structures, because unfortunately there's something else that's better than alcohol. We have something else that keeps people wanting to come back to shul. Because increasingly, other substances, recreational drugs, and psychedelics are being brought into, and have been for some time, the religious experience, the shul experience, the shul environment. Substances are now cast by respected members within our communities as spiritual tools. That's like the Fabringen was a spiritual tool. Now psychedelics in some quarters are cast as a spiritual tool to enhance clarity. But once again, there's a difference between theory and practice. In practice, certainly I have no empirical evidence of this, but in practice, what I've seen and heard is that it's not uncommon for such practices to lead to violence and abusive behavior. Oh, and then we hear that psychedelics are the cutting edge of research. My favorite expression, my very favorite, is all the professors engaging in this activity are doing it. I've been involved with professors for the last 10, 15 years. I know many of them. Not one of them that I know participates in anything like this. But the claim is, and you hear this again and again, this is where the research is. Open your eyes. The research, everybody is doing research, and all the professors at all the great universities are doing this. Well, maybe some are, but certainly not all, and it's certainly not the cutting edge. And it's something I want to speak about perhaps next time, to actually look at the quality of research into psychedelics, but that's something that we'll see if we get to part 2. We may do that next week. But the claim is there that the real research is being done, the cutting edge research, by all the professors. And you're missing out if you don't climb on this bandwagon. You're going to get left behind. It's all done in the field of psychedelics. It's all happening. That's the future of the world. And then they tell us that psychedelics aren't drugs. Well, they are drugs, they're just not narcotics, but we know what they mean. But once again, I've seen people under the influence of these substances. And I can tell you that on one occasion at least, I feared for the person's life, and I feared for my own life when I came in contact with an individual who was under the influence of a psychedelic experience. Now, unfortunately, we have in our literature, and we have in our tradition, and we have in our culture, particularly our more recent culture, literary precedents that speak about alcohol. We don't yet have enough about psychedelics, but I can tell you in 10 years' time, we'll be having rebbes speaking about the wonders of psychedelics if this trend continues. But let's limit it now to alcohol for the moment. What are the literary precedents that we have in our literature? Well, I want to share 2 with you, but there are many. And unfortunately, the literature and the culture and the ethos, and it's not an unspoken ethos, elevates alcohol. In this particular case, the quote I'm going to give you now refers specifically to wine. So we're going to analyze the mystical properties of wine, because wine has a mystical and spiritual property. And this is just one example of a kosher gap that is now open for someone who needs to have an excuse to drink wine, or for that matter, alcohol. So I've gone to a couple of well-known publications. I don't know if I want to specifically mention where they come from, but they're well-known publications online by well-known organizations, very, very well-known organizations. So here's one example. I quote, "Physical things deteriorate while the world of the spirit is eternal." Okay, good. So now we've got Gashmias, physicality always gets rotten and deteriorates, but the spirit grows, and the spiritual realms get more predominant. The spiritual world is eternal. It gets stronger with time. That's why the ultimate expression is Mashiach at the end of time. So with time, the spirituality gets better, the physicality gets less and worse. Okay, back to the quote. The exception is wine. So wine is one physical thing that gets better with time. Wine, and I quote, represents what Judaism is all about. Wine testifies that even the physical can be refined. So you can refine the physical through wine. And this is what Judaism is all about. Fusing the holy and the mundane. So the holy and the mundane are fused through wine. So wine is a tool to combine the physical and the spiritual, the body and the soul. My quote ends, what could be more holy than that? Question mark. In other words, wine has here in this little paragraph, under the caption, Can Wine Be Holy, from a well-known organization, has told us that wine, nothing is more holy than wine, because it fuses the physical and the spiritual. You just extend this a little bit and you can see the kind of ethos that we are creating. And unfortunately, we do have textual precedent, as I said, because we were always Makadish things over wine. But the way it's been used is I don't know if it's an extension or distortion. I think that's an interesting conversation that could be had. But nonetheless, one always goes back to these particular kinds of reference. Now, here's another one that I took from the writings of Elie Wiesel, and I'm going to read it to you because I don't want to make anything up. And it recalls a Simchas Torah that Elie Wiesel had with the Lubavitcher Rebbe when he tried to keep up with the drinking of vodka. And he writes, at my first visit to the Rebbe's court, says Elie Wiesel, I informed him at the outset that I was a Chassid of Vishnitz, not of Lubavitch, and that I had no intention of switching allegiance. Yeah, so he tells the Rebbe, I'm Vishnitz, you Chabad, you're not going to change me. So now, he handed me a glass full to the brim with vodka, says Elie Wiesel. So the Rebbe gave him a glass full to the brim with vodka. The Rebbe, I said, in Vishnitz, a Chassid doesn't drink alone. Nor in Lubavitch, the Rebbe replied. It's actually a very beautiful exchange from a literary point of view. He emptied his glass in a gulp. That's the Rebbe. He gulped down a glass of vodka. I followed suit, says Elie Wiesel. Is one enough in Vishnitz? The Rebbe asked. In Vishnitz, I said bravely, one is but a drop in the sea. In Lubavitch as well, said the Rebbe. And he handed me a second glass, again, full to the brim with vodka. And he refilled his own. He said, L'chaim. I replied, L'chaim. And we emptied our glasses. Right, so now we're 2 full glasses of vodka under the belt within 30 seconds. But I was unaccustomed to drink, says Elie Wiesel, and I felt my head begin to spin. I was not sure where or who I was, or why I had come to this place, why I had been drawn into this strange scene. My brain was on fire. In Lubavitch, we don't stop midway, the Rebbe said. We continue. And in Vishnitz, so what do you Vishnitz Hasidim do? Do you stop halfway? Elie Wiesel responds, in Vishnitz too. I say, we go all the way. The Rebbe struck a solemn pose. He handed me a third glass and refilled his own. My hand trembled. His did not. You deserve a bracha, the Rebbe says. His face beaming with happiness. Name it, says the Rebbe. Give me a bracha. I'll give you a bracha for anything under the sun. I wasn't sure what to say. I was, in fact, in a stupor. The Rebbe then spoke for him and said, would you like me to bless you so that you can begin again and let's have some more l'chaim? I'll give you a bracha. You can have more l'chaim. Drunk as I was, I appreciated his wisdom. Yes, Rebbe, I said, give me your bracha. He blessed me and downed his vodka. I swallowed mine and passed out. So this is just another example of how these ideas become part of a culture. They become part of a culture, and once they become part of a culture, it becomes okay. And it shows that you don't only have to if you're trying to fight this, you don't have to overcome the allure of alcohol for its own sake, but you have to overcome what sociologists call cultural authority, which endorses and even coerces engagement in such activity. How do you fight this? How do you fight a culture like this that endorses and coerces engagement in such activity? And this is just alcohol. Then there were rabbis like the late Beryl Wine, who understood that when alcohol is used, it doesn't take long for other substances to be used as well. The one follows usually after the other. And Beryl Wine, to his credit, I believe, came out very strongly against what we've been speaking about, this culture of alcohol in the Jewish community. And he says, and again I quote, there was a time not long ago when Jews prided themselves on sobriety. Jews weren't always shikar. We even invented an expression called the shikar goy. The non-Jew is the one who's shikar, drunk. The Jew is never drunk. But in recent times, the tables have turned, and you now got a shikar yid. The Jews always scorned at their Eastern European non-Jewish neighbors who were always drunk. But a drunkard was never the hero of the Jewish community, never a hero in the Jewish world, says Beryl Wine. All that has changed dramatically in our time. It's no longer like that. Says Beryl Wine, the rate of alcoholism in the Jewish world is now at an all-time high, equal, if not higher, than the average in many countries. It is one of the many unseen or purposely ignored elephants that now appear in our room. Alcohol, like drugs and tobacco, is addictive. Therefore, alcoholism has to be defeated before it takes hold. This can only be accomplished by a change in society's attitude towards drinking. So there's Beryl Wine coming out, quoting it for what it is, and saying that we need to do something. It's an elephant in the room. Our rates of alcoholism have skyrocketed. It was never, ever like this. And it's not okay. It's not okay. And we need to do something about it. Now, what is particularly perturbed, as I said earlier, is that from a theological perspective, the way substances are incorporated into the liturgy, it's become part of the liturgy. We have a new nusach. It's a new nusach that's crept into our system, and it's an okay nusach. You know, some people look askance at certain nuschaot, but this across the board is a good nusach. Everybody's davening this nusach of alcohol. It's a new liturgy. It's part of our culture. And the instance of substance abuse in our religious community is explained as part of the religious experience. So theologically, besides the physical and mental repercussions, I'm interested in the theological fallout. How do these ideas gel with the theology of Judaism? And I've heard all the religious examples. I've had people sit me down. I've been for walks in parks with people who've tried to explain to me about consciousness. I've heard the religious arguments. I've heard all the mystical motivations. I've had psukim quoted to me from Hasidus, from Kabbalah, from everywhere. And I've read the articles and the writing which propose to show that substances, psychedelics and alcohol, particularly now as we move on to psychedelics help in places where previous therapy did not help. When traditional therapy had failed, psychedelics has helped. And we all know that everything now is becoming more and more legal. Legality is not the question over here. The question is, why do, and this is a question that's intrigued me for years, why do individuals, good people, raised in religious households, who have received a Torah education, a yeshiva education, and been immersed in Torah study, Why do these people still feel compelled to turn outside of Judaism to external substances? Nobody can explain that to me. We've got whatever we want in Judaism. We've got forum, we've got libraries, we have traditions. You want to be mystical, we have Kabbalistic traditions that go back, who knows, till who knows from who knows when. We've got ethical writings, we've got Musa, we've got Hasidic, we've got beautiful teachings, we've got lovely stories, we've got inspirational writings, maybe too much inspirational writings, but we've got so much material. So much material. There's such an emphasis on the experiential in Judaism. God is a personal God. You daven with kavanah. There's so much that we have to experience. We have got his boidinus and his boididus contemplation and meditation that you can weave into Judaism that don't have to be drug-induced. We've got so much literature, so much to draw from. The well is indeed deep. Our waters run deep. Why do we turn to substances that you can buy? And you know something? The people who've been through the religious system, we can no longer turn around and say, no, it's all from the Baltuvas. In the olden days, anything bad happened, we always blame people who came into Judaism. These new Baltuvas are bringing all the nonsense from the outside world. It's not the case now. Now you actually have people who've been off to yeshiva who come back and inspire the other people who haven't been to yeshiva yet. This is very often the case. That people just aren't getting what they're looking for in Judaism anymore. They're not finding it. It's quite evident that they're not finding it because they're turning to places that are not Jewish places. Maybe now they're becoming Jewish places. In some circles, these trips into substance usage are promoted and they're disguised as part of the Torah spiritual experience. So you can go off on a Shabbaton where they're going to teach you how to engage with your inner being, and part of the engagement is partaking in such psychedelic experiences. It's sold to us as a tool for religious and spiritual and mystical enrichment by people who've been through the religious system. And the number of people I know who need to be enhanced, for whom Judaism, old-fashioned Judaism in the book, is no longer enticing anymore. The number of people I know is astonishing and growing as hallucinogens are becoming part of a new Kabbalah. It is the new Kabbalah. It is the new authentic Jewish mysticism. It has been sold and used the same way as alcohol was used in the Farbrengen, a part of a Hasidic mysticism. Now you have an even deeper, expanded mysticism, a Kabbalistic experience through hallucinogens. Now I want to quote you something that I heard from one of the people that I consulted before I prepared this. I spoke to a counselor, Ariella Wolf, and she writes as follows: in my years of therapeutic work, I often encounter clients who hold a genuine longing for meaning, authenticity, and a deeper connection to God. Okay, good. People are all looking for God. It's often these clients who may then be drawn to psychedelic experiences. Now, that's fascinating. The same people who are looking for God, who are looking for something deeper in life, it's those very people become vulnerable and they get drawn into the psychedelic experiences. And the people who are overseeing these experiences, the facilitators, are very clever, because what they do is they provide a set and setting which is almost religious-like. So she continues, the ceremonies and rituals often woven into the plant medicine journeys. They are rituals. People bow down, they go down on pillows, and they receive things from a special jar, and there's a ritual, and there's sometimes music playing. There's a ritual to this. Often appear to them that this is what they've been looking for. She writes, they've been yearning for engagement with something divine. And these rituals help them. So they feel that they've come to the right place. They want to engage with God. Well, here you can find God in the cup. One cannot help notice the emergence of self-proclaimed facilitators. Even in our own community, we have known facilitators. I call them nouveau rebbes. These are new rebbes who pop up. These are the practitioners popping up everywhere. They guide people through the healing journey. They will take you on a journey. They'll take you away and they'll take you to places and they'll sit with you and they'll guide you responsibly through the process. And these figures are often paid for their services, but they speak the language of therapy. So a person who's somewhat gullible or vulnerable is going to think, well, this is, therapy. Everyone needs a bit of therapy. So here's some therapy. It's sold to them as part of the therapy, as new age therapy. It's medicine. That's the word that's been used. Drink the medicine. It's not taking psychedelics. It is medicine. You will be healed. Medicine, medicine. It's dispensed as medicine. Plant medicine. It is medicine. But it's also sold as Jewish mysticism. This is Kabbalah. This is what the Kabbalists were all doing. Now you can experience what the Kabbalists experience. And what you've been hearing about experiential Judaism, everyone tells you you've got to feel Hashem in your heart. Well, you'll feel Hashem in your heart. In fact, you'll enter into Hashem's heart. And these rebbes now, these nouveau rebbes, their role is not only to administer safely, allegedly, these substances, but afterwards they interpret the experience. They help you interpret what the experience was. And they now, of insights, you tell them, many people have a trip register where they record what they experience, and then they discuss it, and they say, well, this means this, and that means that. And these ideas are all interpreted. And they offer meaning. And they've offered ritual. And they've given a sense of legitimacy to this entire experience. They've raised it onto the level of Judaism, and the highest level of Judaism, Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism. And now substances have become acculturated. Alcohol has been acculturated for a long time. It wasn't always a Jewish practice. As we saw, it's part of the culture, as we saw in some of those exchanges. Now psychedelics are becoming the next part of this acculturated substance. We take something from somewhere else, it becomes part of our culture. We imbibe it literally into our culture. And now we have spiritual shortcuts. And yes, hardly anyone is speaking out against this. Says Dan Wolf, our community should not fall in line with a culture that normalizes the use of drugs and alcohol. Unfortunately, the horse has already bolted. These practices have become normalized. Now, let me share with you some of my interviews that I conducted with people on the condition of anonymity. These are all people from our community and from other communities. They agreed to share these incidents and observations, and I agreed to withhold their names. I've spoken to young people, old people from across the board over a long period of time. Sometimes at a safe wedding, you think you're going to a wedding, it's safe. You drop your kids off at a wedding, you'll fetch them at 10, bye mom, bye dad, we'll fetch you later. Okay, it's a safe wedding. What can go wrong at a wedding? It's a chasana. Sometimes at a shul function, very safe. Bar mitzvah celebration, very safe. Drop your kids, fetch them later. See you at 10:30. You can even sleep late tomorrow morning before school. Guests are lured by respectable people, people to whom they look up to. They're sometimes taken outside or to a corner, and they're introduced to new substances besides the ubiquitous alcohol. Alcohol is no longer the problem. No longer the problem. They're introduced now to other substances. So I asked an ex-student of mine, what happened to that class that we had, so many years ago? I haven't taught for many years now. But what happened to the? I bump into these people all over. I've taught thousands of kids, literally, and I bump into them all the time. Usually, they still recognize me. I don't recognize them anymore. But I asked this one chap that I saw recently, what happened to that whole class? And then he knew that I was always interested because I always used to speak to them about drugs and alcohol. In those days, it was more alcohol than drugs. I said, what happened to all those boys in the class? It was such a lovely class. And I know that I think that was one year where we had like 100% success rate, i.e. 100% of the kids went off to Shiva. If it wasn't 100, it was 90 something. I said, what they're doing? And then, of course, I said, and tell me, are they, what they're doing in terms of drugs and now substances? So he said to me, this was his response, at least 80% of that class are actively involved with substances today. And these are all kids who went off to Shiva. Some communities have got cakes at the kiddush, and people know which cakes to touch and which cakes not to touch. In some instances, pre-Shabbos gatherings are regularly organized on a Friday afternoon. What they do is they open bottles and then they throw the lids away. And in one case, the slogan was, we provide the music, you bring your own mind or mood enhancers. Bring your own mood enhancers. So we bring the music, you bring your own mood enhancers. And we'll party together. And the participants then afterwards arrive at shul, if they can, in a state of total inebriation or totally high. It's not nice going to shul on Friday afternoon. You've just had your bath, you're clean, these people come in and their eyes are glazed over and they actually can't talk. I'm not saying it happens everywhere, but it happens too often. Underage children today are quite savvy and somewhat experienced with various substances. And there are horrific stories. They don't speak about it, but they always come out of kids who go off to a party, young kids. They're exposed to certain substances, and there are disastrous consequences that occur as a result of what takes place at seemingly innocent parties and other occasions. Nature hikes is another thing. Go on a trail, a 4-day hike in the mountains. Wonderful, you're going to see nature and you're going to find God in the nature. Well, you'll find God in the nature of the substances as well. Because often, and it is very popular today, I've spoken to people who've been on these items, not just 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. And on these hikes and these outings, sometimes they're arranged as groups. Substances are freely available on these hikes. And they're not only freely available, they're expected. People come with boxes prepared with lines of what can take you up and what can bring you down. They come prepared. And these nature hikes and these nature gatherings are attended by well-to-do and respectable people who have children who play with our children. They form part of the same lift schemes. We send our kids home with them when they come back from their hikes. And I have been told that it's not unusual for 50 to 80%. That seems to be the kind of average from the people that I've spoken to. The 50 to 80% of the people who go on these hikes are taking substances. Someone told me recently there's a very dangerous trail somewhere in the mountains, and there's a camp perched precariously on top of a cliff. And some people that told me the name of the community, these are well-known, identified people. They're identified as from a certain community. They were tripping on mushrooms at 9:30 at night. And there was a danger that they would fall down, and people didn't know what to do with them. And unfortunately, this creates pressure when you're on a hike. You're in a group, that's your whole universe. It puts pressure on other people in the group to be exposed and to participate. Otherwise, you're going to be regarded as a prude, or you're certainly going to stick out. Not unusual to see people coming to Mincha on Shabbos afternoon and they say inebriated or whatever, they can't participate in a shir, they can't daven properly. Not unusual for a husband to come home late from shul in the morning, completely drunk, after being guided home. And his wife he's in such a state that his wife is embarrassed in front of the guests, or worse, the wife is okay with it. It's normal. And something I've also seen. It's okay. Go lie down, go to the bathroom. You'll be fine a little bit later. That's even worse. People on Shabbos, because they can't smoke and do other things, they often use drops and oils. I taught for 25 years in a school, and on occasions, on a auspicious occasion, a so-called auspicious occasion, I'd seen alcohol passed around to the teaching staff, who then went back to teach the kids. And the problem was that in the past, drinking in shul was a proclivity and the privilege of men. Now, women also want to participate in the experience. They also have souls, and not only men have souls, women have souls. And they want to be inspired and uplifted, like the men folk. But today you'll see gummies often passed around on the other side of the mechitza. It's not an unusual occurrence, because substances have now become egalitarian. At a bar mitzvah celebration recently, one mother didn't know how she got there, and she didn't know how she was going to get home to her family. In another case, someone who was given substances at a shul kiddush, weren't told what it was, and the paramedics had to be called in. You know what's scary? Today you can go to public talks, symposiums, or even like getaways, weekends, where we have all sorts of speakers, but you'll have these people, and it's fine, there are open forums and people should be allowed to speak whatever they want to speak about. But you will find people representing the Jewish community, as they go there as from people, and what they do is they try and convince the people about of the future of psychedelics and hallucinogens, and they explain that these things are, they in fact are part of authentic Judaism. This is a Jewish mystical experience. It's put across as being just another of the mitzvot that Jews have to do in order to get close to Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's how these things are peddled and sold. And people listen, and they see someone with a beard and someone who looks like he knows what he's talking about, and people take him seriously, and people take them seriously. There's a new trend that's being peddling right now, and it's something I still can't wrap my head around. Certain gummies in our community have now been authorized by a Beit Din. They're authorized as being kosher. They now have kosher certification. Now, what does this mean? You can now advertise your gummies as green, pure, and kosher. And what's this saying? It's saying not just that the gummies are kosher, but it's saying that the experience is kosher. Because if you have a hechsher from a well-known person, it's got a name of someone you associate as being a conservative rabbi in the past, and now this stuff is okay, what are you going to think? Well, I've asked shilas of him before he's now given the hechsher. Oh, this is okay. Everybody's doing it. This is okay. I saw communication from a well-known rabbi. Again, I'm not going to mention names, but this is a rabbi whose inspirational video clips do the circuit. You'll get sent it 15 times by people who think you haven't seen it yet, and it's on some silly thing on the parsha. There's something rhymes with something else, and therefore it means this. One of those ubiquitous words that don't really mean anything unless you're looking for some meaning. But it's like this new pop religious psychology that gets dispersed through the community, and people love it. And I saw a private communication that someone showed me. So obviously, I'm not going to mention any names, but the person himself showed me the communication, trying to tell me that even this guy endorses plant medicine. And I saw that this person had written that plant medicine is good, but it must be supervised by a skilled facilitator. A skilled facilitator, right? That's a quote, a skilled facilitator. Now, you could say, well, that's good. At least he warned him that you have to have a skilled facilitator. The problem was that this individual was clearly vulnerable. And clearly from the communications, because I saw the entire communication, which that person showed me, I was privy to it, you could see this person was crying out for help and was extremely vulnerable and on the verge of a breakdown. Yet, this individual, this highly respected and well-known individual, essentially endorsed a 12-hour trip on plant medicine, which he subsequently went on, of course, in the presence of a self-proclaimed specialist. So now he did what he was told to do. He was told to find a specialist or use a specialist. Everybody is a specialist. Everyone I know working in this field is a specialist healer, a specialist therapist. So this tacit endorsement was very dangerous because he gave a heksha to someone extremely vulnerable to embark upon a plant medicine journey for clarity. And I said this last week, we are somewhat to blame because besides acculturating alcohol, which we've done in our literature, and we tell wonderful stories. How many stories are there? The Hasidic stories about someone who was so shikah, he couldn't do this and he couldn't do that. He was hanging upside down, and we all laugh and think, oh, what a wonderful bottle he was to his Rebbe. He was so nullified to his Rebbe, he would do silly things. Besides that culture, the literature itself often talks about experientialism. You need to experience it. As part of the Chiddush of the Hasidic movement. Baal Shem Tov spoke about, you don't have to be a scholar anymore. It's about feeling, go walk in the forest. It's feeling. And this then crept into other communities as well, non-Hasidic communities. They all adopted this Hasidic approach. They've been Hasidized, what do you call it? The Hasidification has taken place. And one allows the the expression, the essential Jew inside the person to be expressed. So everyone is looking for means of expressing and finding having a cosmic experience. We find these words all the time. We talk about these words. It's no longer we're looking up halachas and things like that. It's now finding immediate spiritual gratification. I'm going to have kavanah now. I'm going to experience Hashem. I'm going to have a personal relationship with Hashem. The cosmic, it's supernatural, it's mystic. And then we throw into that messianism that the Messiah is coming now. And the problem is the Messiah doesn't come right now. You wake up tomorrow morning, the sun rises, and the day is exactly the same as yesterday. The Messiah hasn't come, the cosmos hasn't changed, and your wonderful experience has still left you in debt, and you still have to go out to work, and you've got problems with people in your family. So what do you do? What do you do now? Now we've opened up this expectation, this cosmic, mystical, messianic expectation. What do? It doesn't work. So now you go to psychedelics. Psychedelics work. They work until afterwards, but they do work. Here's an interesting ad that I saw before I conclude with one of the halachic points. This is something that I took off an advert from a frum source that was selling mushrooms. So this is a religious source. You can see it's a mystical, religious, Jewish source selling shrooms. So, I quote, practices like breathwork, dancing, prayer. There again, you can see it, breathwork, dancing, prayer. This is the kind of culture that breeds this. These are the people that are attracted to this. Breathwork, now they're becoming like Kabbalists like Abu Lafia, and the practice of dancing Dancing is not dancing because you're happy. Dancing is now part of a mystical experience. What you do to your body is you're changing the shape of the Adam Elion's also dancing in the heavens, because the one is dependent upon the other. And prayer, the power of prayer. These great expectations. There's a power. Something's going to change, but it doesn't change. But the expectation is there. So they're drawing in these people who are looking for everything that they've heard about. And the use of psychedelics, says this advert, can all help us change our state of awareness. Okay, well, they haven't told us anything that we don't know already. Change your state of awareness. According to Kabbalah, oh, I love this. All of a sudden, now it's Kabbalah. All of a sudden, I've studied Jewish mysticism, and I've studied Jewish messianism. I haven't really come across anything like this. But all of a sudden now, in this, according to Kabbalah, the physical, well, this ties in with my notion of the expectations. The physical and spiritual worlds are inextricably linked. That is correct. That is what Kabbalah teaches. As it happens here, so it happens up there. You can use theurgy, you can affect, you can change things up there if you change things down here. And what occurs in the material realm can affect, spelt with an A. So the people writing this might have better spent their time learning a bit of English grammar. Anyway, it has an effect on the spiritual realm and vice versa. Okay? That's what it does. So psychedelics, according to Kabbalah, he's claiming, or this person is claiming, psychedelics and dancing and breath work, and prayer affect the spiritual realm and vice versa. Psychedelics have the knowledge. Listen to this. Psychedelics have the knowledge. So now psychedelics they're a god. They're a being with knowledge. They have the knowledge. They speak to you. Psychedelics, not that you can extract the knowledge. They have the knowledge. The psychedelics are the new rebbes. They have the knowledge to work with our restricted awareness. Psychedelics have the knowledge to work with our restricted awareness. Listen to that sentence. And open us back up because of their broad nature. Yes, that's my quote. That's their quote. They are our guide. That's just what I said. Psychedelics are the Rebbe. They are our guide in the mystical travel through the four worlds. Because now you're going through the Daled Olamis. Kabbalah, particularly Hasidut, speaks about the four realms. So now they'll guide you through the four realms so that you can go from Asiya into Atzilus, so from the bottom right to the top. Who will guide you? The psychedelics will guide you now. They become Kabbalified. They become part of Jewish mysticism. This movement is a new movement of Jewish mysticism. It's a new Hasidic movement that's been born under our very noses. And it is going to be more popular than the old Hasidic movement. And if you want to buy mushrooms, head over to, and they mention the name, I'm not going to mention the name, and they say they're 30% off the first order. Yeah. Okay, so it's not the first one is free, 30% off the first order. Okay. Let's just quickly look at some halachic considerations that you either accept or reject. I certainly don't want to do any preaching, but just to show that it might not be as compatible as one might think. These practices might not be so compatible. So this is something that Dan Wolf pointed out to me at the Aguda convention a couple of years ago. They asked the question, what is the Torah perspective regarding smoking weed? This is what they asked in Aguda. Aguda is like a gathering of all the very serious religious leaders, conservative religious leaders, and they actually ask the Gedolim, which is the phrase that's used, they use the word weed. What's the Torah perspective regarding smoking weed? There was a question that was put. Once something becomes legal, does that change how a Jew looks at it? That was a question. So a couple of rabbis answered. Here's Rabbi Yosef Elephant, is quite well known. he's first of all absolutely bewildered that they're addressing such a question at an Aguda convention. It's not a camp for sort of semi-religious people. This is Aguda. You don't get more religious than an Aguda convention. And they're asking questions like this, using lingo like this. So he expressed his bewilderment in this, because he says that Torah Jews must be directed by intellect, and anybody who puts their intellect or the intellectual functioning at risk, they're compromising, and he puts it very interesting, what fundamentally defines them as human. I'm going to say that again. They're compromising what defines them as human. You know, the intellect is what makes a person human. If you compromise your intellect, you are compromising what fundamentally defines you as human. You might have a wonderful experience. I mean, you can jump off buildings and fly. You could try that. You could do anything, but you're undermining what makes you human. So you may have a non-human experience. You probably will. Good luck, but it's certainly not a human. It's even called the out-of-body experience. It's a transcendental experience. But you are denying you're defying your seichel, your mind that defines you as a human being. By letting go of your ego, because they claim that these are how you burn the man, you burn the ego. You let go of the rein, and the horse just runs free, and it's okay, and it's wonderful. But they're not just letting go. It's not just freedom, because what they're doing, says Rabbi Elephant, he says, they're actually denying, by letting that horse go free, they're denying the godly spark that is in it, because the godly spark is what's supposed to moderate between what you do and what you don't do. Now you're letting everything go. The horse bolts. And he concludes by saying, this is not something that should be justified, and the community needs to stand up. And there's not enough people. Beryl Wine said we stand up. Rabbi Elephant stand up. Not enough people are standing up. Once again, going back to Professor Menachem Breyer, he shares a couple of interesting things from a halachic point of view. And again, I don't want to preach, but just some things to consider. He says, people always claim that their various drugs or psychedelics, whatever they're doing, they're coming in touch with their deeper selves, but having an experience of a deeper Judaism. The Judaism becomes more meaningful and particularly more mystical because of their great clarity. And he cites the famous, this was an early academic, he was a theologian and a psychologist and an academic, Walter Pankow, who writes, the phenomenon of mystical experience may occur outside the framework of any form of religion. In other words, you can have a mystical experience, and that's not part of a religion. So Breyer is using this quotation, he's citing this to show that a mystical experience doesn't only take place within the religious realm, it can take place out of a religious space. You know, it's a non-religious or irreligious, even an atheist can have a mystical experience. So basically what we're saying is you have a mystical experience, it doesn't mean that it's related to your Judaism. It's an out-of-body experience, it's an out-of-Judaism experience as well. So don't conflate it with Judaism. I think that is a very, very important point. You can have a mystical experience outside the framework of any formal religion. It's not a religious experience. There's a difference between, we think it's the same, mystical and religious. Mystical is more deeper, is the deepest aspect of religious. He says, no, anyone can have a mystical experience completely divorced of a religious system, which is very interesting. You can have a full-on mystical experience unrelated to any religion. So that's something. Claiming that this is part of a deep Jewish, religious, halachic, Kabbalistic experience, anyone can have an experience like that. It's not a Jewish experience. And then Breyer goes on to explain that part of the psychedelic experience is to let go, is to dissolve the individuality. But he says there's a problem with that, because what is the Jewish experience of spirituality? It's where the Jew, where the neshama in you, that part of you, but it's in you, connects with God. It's the person in reality connecting with God. That's the religious experience. Now you dissolving that individuality. So where's the you to connect with the divine? What are you connecting with the divine? Are you connecting what? Divine with divine, or imagine divine with divine? What is divine anyway? But what are you connecting with what? The Jew's supposed to connect the soul of the person with the divine. You lose that soul, you lose your individuality, what you're connecting to the divine. That's an interesting theological question. The religious experience has to be within the individual. You can't let go of the individual because then it's not you having the experience. You have to have the experience with God, otherwise you're not having the experience. The experience is taking place somewhere else, in your mind, maybe in another reality, whatever you like. It's not between you. It's not you and the so-called transcendent divine. It can't take place without. If it takes place without, it's no longer a religious experience. So that's fine, do it, but don't claim it's Jewish. Don't claim it's halachic. Don't claim it's Kabbalistic. It's not the fervor in your soul. Your soul's flying. It's gone. It's not you anymore. It didn't take place in the real world. If it doesn't take place in the real world, it's not a religious experience. It can't be a drug experience. It can't be escape from reality. A religious experience is an experience that you have while your soul is in your body. Otherwise, you're not having the experience. Experience is external. So here are a couple of things that Breyer writes. He says there's a notion of ruach shtut. A person's not allowed to put himself in a state of folly or hallucinatory state. There's actually a Torah prohibition. So whether that's Jewish or not, that's what the Torah says. Take it or leave it. You can't put yourself in a ruach shtut. Ruach shtus, a state of folly. If you drink too much, you become silly. If you lose control of your faculties, that's called a ruach shtut. Again, I say take it or leave it. According to halachic frameworks, you're not allowed to be in a state of shtut because it leads to all sorts of other areas, framing and speaking using halachic speak. Nothing is more ruach shtut than alcohol and certainly psychedelics. So there you go. That's number one. Sure. Again, you can do it, but it's not necessarily. It's not a hechsher. It's not a Jewish thing. It's not a Jewish thing. Number two, there's a notion of hachovel ba'atzmo, someone who inflicts self-injury, someone who self-damages, inflicts injury on their person. That's something that religious Jews are not allowed to do. The next thing Muslim Jews are not allowed to do is hachovel b'chavero, injure other people. What happens with psychedelics is most of the time you are drawing other people in. There's a evangelical aspect to psychedelics that is not to be sneezed at. Bring all your friends. We'll do this together. It's done in groups. It's bring your friends, and you tell everyone else. It's a Kiruv movement. It's a Kiruv movement. This is the new Kiruv movement. It is the new Hasidic movement. Anyway, hachovel b'chavero, injuring other people, inflicting injury, whether it's psychological, intellectual, or emotional, or whatever you want to call it, it doesn't mesh with Judaism, especially when husbands and wives are made to suffer. So you are out there having a wonderful time. In the meantime, your poor children. You're having a selfish high. What about your poor husband, your wife, your family, your kids, your friends? It's not compatible with Lifnei Iver, which tells me what I was saying, enticing other people. Come join us. We're going for a Shabbaton. What can be wrong with a Shabbaton? All women's Shabbaton. Come. What can be wrong? I can tell you what can be wrong. Speak to people who go, and you'll find out what can be wrong. But that's Lifnei Iver. People who organize these gets. I spoke to someone. They take kids after school. I don't want to mention the name. They go on a tour. Take them to Israel and they show them all around Israel. The kids came out. I know these kids. And they came back and they told me, wonderful, wonderful. How the rabbis were so cool. They were drunk 24/7. Okay, they were drunk 24/7, drunk or high 24/7. So they were with these kids. So you send your kids, you think they're in a wonderful, safe environment, going off to Israel and going sightseeing and wonderful, wonderful. But the people in charge of these kids, the kids told me, not one, not two, again, not six. They told me that the kids are that the people, the madrachim, the rabbis who took them on the thing, were literally drunk 24/7. In the middle of the night, they were drinking them. And the rabbis will tell you, well, I had to connect. It was so amazing. I connected with these people, with these precious neshamas. I connected with them. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just saying, you do that, it could be construed as lifnei iver. You think you're doing a great mitzvah and saving the world, could be lifnei iver. Because you're enticing other people to participate. You have the notion of ezika barabim, causing a multitude of people. It's the same thing again. You've got lots of terms in Judaism that can easily tell you that what's happening over there is not entirely kosher, even if your gummies have a hechsher. And then there's also the idea of vishinantim ma'od lenafshotechem. You must take extreme measures to guard your health. Extreme measures. Don't just drink greens, but take extreme measures. Be very careful regarding what you eat, what you drink, and what you imbibe. Now, I conclude. Rambam actually says an interesting thing. He's writing 800 odd years ago. Says, quoting now from Pirkei Moshe, he says, how dangerous it is to indulge in medicine, tranquilizers, sedatives, or stimulants, and becoming habituated to them. I mean, there you have it. Rambam writing 800 years ago. It's dangerous to indulge in medicine, tranquilizers, sedatives, stimulants, medicines, tranquilizers, sedatives, and becoming habituated to them. Rambam also says, he says this in Moreh Nevuchim. Remember, we spoke about this before, that Rambam is kind of in a way questions the notion of what is a Jewish neshama, what is your neshama, and he puts everything down to the seichel. It's your intellect, it's your mind. Everything that you learn, everything that you teach, everything that you've been taught, all the knowledge that you've acquired, the seichel, or however you want to define it, is the only thing that defies death. So when a person passes away, the only thing that lives on, for the Rambam, the neshama is the seichel. That's the seichel, the mind. The mind is the most precious thing. It's the only thing that's going to survive you. Now, you want to play Geist with the mind? You want to alter the mind? The only thing that's going to survive you, you want to mess with it? All right, so my conclusion is as follows. We have a very painful paradox we see over here. Instead of confronting and underlying our hunger for meaning and working hard to try to find meaning, reading, studying, thinking, contemplating, we take a shortcut. Boom, it's over in a couple of hours. We offered transcendental shortcuts. But the challenge is to ask deeper questions. Research, use your mind. There's drugs that come from intellect and knowledge that you acquire. It makes its own drug. It's enticing. It's also addictive. It changes you. It alters. It's a mind-altering experience. Gaining knowledge is a real mind-altering experience. Ask questions about the depth of meaning. Don't be restricted. Maybe people are too scared to ask questions. Open your mind. Open your consciousness. Ask anything. Explore anything. Say anything. Ask any question in Judaism. Question anything in Judaism. Question the greatest leaders. Expand your mind. Expand your web. That's also a drug. Try it. Go as deep as you can into Judaism. Don't look someone also to look at that. Go there, read it, study it. Go into it academically, intellectually. Judaism requires intellectual engagement. Mitzvah is Talmud Torah. It's not experiential. The Kabbalists emphasize the notion of, the experience. It's a mind experience, but it's not substance induced. It's brain induced. And if you have to interrogate the very structures of the faith that you were brought up in and the structures of your community, question them. You're not bound by them. They don't define Judaism. Read things for yourself. Open your mind. Judaism is much bigger than people think. People will be surprised what a world there is out there. I can tell you, it's a bigger world than the psychedelic world. You'll see things. Go into the history of Jewish mysticism. Go into the past of Judaism. Go into the origins of every movement within Judaism. You will be astonished. You will have such a trip, and it won't impact your family. The more mystical communities today, unfortunately, are the ones who are more gullible. So that's something to watch out for, because they've always been taught about this, about that. Now they're suddenly given a shortcut. That's why you find those people often get involved in these spiritual enhancement activities. And what happens is, unfortunately, alternate medicine, whether we like it or not, has created an alternate Judaism. It's already an alternate Judaism. Alternate medicine creates alternate Judaism. We are on the precipice, as I conclude, of something far more precarious than we imagine. This is something that counselors that I've spoken to and people that I've spoken to who know what's going on. We are on the precipice of something very, very dangerous, something very, very popular, something extremely widespread, and something that's going to slip through without us even realizing it. And it's going to come in the guise of religious experientialism. We're going to have religious practitioners promoting this. They already are. And they're going to lure you into this and lure your children into this if they haven't been exposed to it already. And because everybody is doing it, it's okay. I spoke to someone who is well versed in this particular world, and they told me, again, on condition of anonymity, that this stuff is going on in every single shul in our community. That's what this individual told me, who is in the know. I know he's in the know because I know he knows. In every single community, in our community, this is going on in every single community, under the noses of the rabbis, and sometimes the rabbis participate as well. Sometimes there is their tacit endorsement. Sometimes they turn a blind eye. I hope this is a gross exaggeration. As I say, I have no empirical evidence because I haven't conducted a study. I would love to do that. I think it needs to be done. But if there's even a kernel of truth to what he said, we are on the precipice of something bigger than we can imagine. And I call our religious leadership, even though they are employed and have to be very careful about what they say. Maybe the people paying them are going on such trips, and it's the vogue, and everybody's doing this. I know those pressures because I've experienced them myself. It's time for religious leadership to actually stand up. It's enough. We've acculturated alcohol. We're about to sanctify psychedelics if we haven't already. So between acculturating alcohol and sanctifying psychedelics, we're not going to go to a good space. And it is time for us, it's time for the religious leadership to actually stand up, because it's already too late to remain on the fence. I thank you for listening and look forward to seeing you again next time. By the way, next time, I think I might continue along this line and actually look at some of the academic studies, and we can analyze the quality of the academic studies that have taken place from the 1950s to today. It's a very interesting study. I think it's important. It might not relate directly to what we usually speak about, but I think it's important for people to be able to counter the claim that all the professors are doing it. It's the cutting edge of psychology. It's the greatest expression of academic research that's ever happened. It's the future of everything. I think that those claims need to be met with on an academic level, and we may look into some of the early and current research into psychedelics and see if we can evaluate them to some extent. I thank you once again, and thanks for listening. Goodbye.